want to have a look at the BRNO number 2 22 rifles. This is a classic rifle. Many of these were made and they've formed the basis for some beautiful hunting rifles, as well as being rebuilt into top grade target rifles because the action in the receiver is so strong on these. But particularly when it comes to scope mounting, there are some things to consider if you're trying to get scope mounts, and I get a lot of questions about the best ways to mount up a scope on a BRNO number 2. So one of the first things to look at is the design of the dovetail. Okay, so they have a very strong dovetail machined into the top of the receiver. On the BRNO number 2, this dovetail is, we need to measure it across the wider parts of the dovetail there, just under 16 millimeters. Okay, so that is very important, because if you compare this to one of the newer rifles, the CZ452 or the 455, 457, most of those rifles have an 11 millimeter wide dovetail. So it's important to measure the width of your dovetail. And then there are some CZ American models which have been made with the 3/8 dovetail, which is about 9.5 millimeters. So the width of the dovetail is one of the first things to measure when you're looking at scope mounting, to make sure that you get the correct bases to fit the rifle. So I have a selection of different scope mounting options with the correct 16 millimeter dovetail. One of my favorite configurations is the classic Leopold 4-power rimfire scope. I've had a number of these scopes. They are, really great little scopes for a hunting rifle. I believe they're hard to beat. Okay, so we just have to get the scope onto that dovetail, and when we mount it up there, we'll look at a couple of things to consider, because quite often, I haven't got this opened up enough, quite often I get calls and that the customer has got some mounts but they don't fit properly. As I said, the dovetail is the most common complaint. They've ordered the wrong ones for the CZ452, and these are the correct fitting ones. Now when you mount up, this is a one-piece mounting, one-piece base with the two separate rings, and rings are available to suit this base that can be 1 inch, 30 or 34 millimeter. But if you look at that, you can see that this is a one-piece construction, so the rings are linked together, and when this is all mounted up, it's extremely secure. So that is a very nice, neat setup. Now you can see another point where people often go wrong is getting sufficient height to clear this rear sight. So if you're putting a large scope on here with a 50 millimeter objective, for example, for night shooting, then you have to consider the position of this rear sight. Okay, and it often causes you problems if you put too big a scope on there and you don't have enough height. Now you can raise the height of the rings quite easily. As I said, I like this arrangement because it's very ergonomic. The scope fits on there beautifully. Another thing to consider with a lot of scopes, the Leopolds are good like this because they have quite a slim eyepiece, is that if we look at this clearance here, you can see that there's clearance around the bolt handle, right? And that's very important, because a lot of scope mounting configurations with larger eyepieces are going to foul the bolt handle, and that's a real common issue if you use too big a scope and you don't have enough height. course, this same advice applies to a lot of other rifles as well. So that's one option for scope mounting. Now, I always tighten these up with a torque wrench, and I normally tighten up the clamping of the bases here to 20 inch-pounds, and I normally do the rings to about 15 inch-pounds. I mean, it's a 22. It doesn't need to have the screws sort of overly tightened. It's a very, very strong mounting arrangement on this rail, so you know it's usually going to be very, very secure. That's one of the beauties of this design with the integral dovetail, and it is extremely strong arrangement. You can look at the bottom how these bases clamp up. They've got, you know, 2 screws here. This isn't going to go anywhere, an arrangement like this. Alright, now you can also opt for a 2-piece arrangement. Very similar. You can have 2-piece bases, and that's just a personal preference. The 2-piece can give you the option of varying the position of the rings a little bit more, and it also can allow you sometimes a bit easier access to put your fingers in to the action if you need to clear a case out of there or whatever. So yeah, 2-piece bases, they clamp up the same way, and they're also extremely strong, and different size rings can go on there. But one of the most common mounting arrangements at the moment is the Picatinny rail, and the extended Picatinny rail, because when you've got such a short receiver as you get on a rimfire, it's often difficult to mount certain scopes, or now in particular thermals. People are putting thermal scopes and they need a longer mounting surface, so the Picatinny rail is ideal for that. So there again, it's clamped on like so and torqued up correctly. And then, you know, you can put, you know, a massive big scope or a thermal onto the base. And here again, like this is obviously probably not the scope you would put on a hunting rifle, but it shows you that you've got options to mount a large scope where otherwise it wouldn't fit on the top of the receiver, and it's very strong and secure. And one of the other benefits, if we take this off, you can see very often, particularly with a thermal or night vision scope, you need to turn the base around to bring the eyepiece right close to you. So you can take this off and you can reverse it. Right, so when it's reversed like this, it's going to bring the scope back closer to your eye, and you know, often with a night vision or thermal scope you're going to want like a rubber eyepiece to be right up close to your eye. That's how they're designed. So this allows you to do that. It extends it, it'll clear the bolt handle, and that gives you a lot of versatility in the mountings. You can use rings on it if you want, you know, whatever, you know, it's very versatile because you can put so many different types of things onto a Picatinny rail. So you can put high rings, low rings, you know, there's no limit to what can be put onto that rail. But certainly if you've got a thermal type scope, you need the extended rail because you need this additional length for a wide sort of mounting base like this that extends past what can go onto the receiver. So those are a few things to consider if you're trying to find a scope mounting solution for the BRNO number 2. Similar advice for the CZ452 and the other CZ models that have the narrower dovetail. We have similar mounting solutions for those. But the BRNO number 2s, there's many of these around, and I get a lot of inquiries from customers trying to find a solution to mount things on these rifles.